Howdy. God, I wish I had a joint in my story, but I don't. I went to Aix-en-Provence 2 years ago, and I lived in Paris before, but I'd never been to Provence. And I got there with this bad case of what I call stranger fatigue. And I had stranger fatigue because I had been living in London at that time for about 6 months, and going everywhere, nobody knew me, I knew no one, nobody ever said my name, and I just was so tired of it. Of course, when I got to X, it's just like the feeling magnified, yay, more people who don't know me. And where normally I would be this lone, intrepid traveler and have all these adventures and I'd be totally intuitive and know exactly where to go, I was completely clueless when I got to Aix-en-Provence that time. And I thought, oh God, I'm gonna spiral into this deep depression, what am I gonna do? So I just literally just had to shove myself out of the hotel. And first thing I see is this church at the end of the street, so I thought, well, I'll just start there. And I am not a religious joiner by any means at all, but I love visiting houses of worship and I love prayer because it just makes me feel like I'm kind of stumbling toward enlightenment somehow. So I stumble into this church and I say, dear God, and when I say God, double quotes, I actually see in the bottom of the screen in my head, like CNN, like cosmic spirit, collective unconscious, Krishna, Mother, Father, Earth, something like that. So I said, dear God, I don't know what I'm doing here. Can you just kind of give me a sign as to what I'm supposed to do, and please save my vacation? And can you make it fun, please? And so I just kind of schlump to the center of town, and somebody tells me, wait for this bus, and it'll take you to the north side of the mountain, you'll have a good time. So I'm waiting at this bus stop well before this bus was supposed to come, and it was supposed to be marked La Victorine, and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting, nothing happens, and there's these old ladies at the bus stop. So meanwhile, this new old lady comes over, and I give her my seat, and finally we find out most of the people are waiting for the same bus. It had been standing there the whole time, but it's not marked La Victorine, and it took off without us, and the bus driver was looking at us the whole time and didn't tell us he was going, just completely unmarked. He was just, so he leaves, and you can imagine the French kvetching that went on after, and I am great at being outraged and disgusted in French from living in Paris. So I immediately joined this team and like, oh, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Merde alors, c'est pas vrai. And so this woman that I had given my seat to says, you don't have to take that bus. You can come to the south side of the mountain where I live, and I will show you the path and where to go. So I just, follow her on the bus like a duck or something. And she ends up, her name's Helene, and she ends up being really sweet and nice, and she reminds me of my mom, and we have a conversation, and she says, so what are your plans for today? And it was a really hot, sweltering, it felt like July, even though it was April. So I said, well, I'm just gonna walk on this mountain the whole day. And she said, well, do you have any water? And I'm like, no. And do you have any food? Not so much, no. And she says, do you have a hat? No. So to her, I'm an idiot, of course. And she said, no. You're gonna come home with me. I'm gonna give you some water and some food at least, and I'll show you, I'll draw you the paths and show you exactly where to go. So we go, wind our way up this mountain. There's nothing, absolutely nothing. Hélène lives in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing but tall yellow grass and blue sky. And I think her address is actually Hélène the mountain. And I follow her, and we go through this path, and there's lavender and clay pots and fruits and vines, and she says she lives in this white cottage which is 300 years old, and it's got green shutters. And if you were to ask me what my imaginary picture of Provence was, it was, this lavender, the cottage, the sweet little old lady inside. And I couldn't believe I was there, and she takes me in, and there's this big rustic kitchen. she shows me all her family pictures, and she tells me her life story. She even shows me a recent chest x-ray for some reason. And anyway, so we're friends. so I tell her about this church, and she says, Gigi, it's not an accident that you're here. God is looking for you, Gigi. And I said, okay. And so stuff like my mom would say, And she gives me food and water, and she sends me on my way. I follow her instructions exactly, and I'm following this path, and I see waterfalls and quarries and, herbs and springs and all this stuff. And 3 hours later, as I pass back down the mountain past her house, I see her in the distance. She's actually standing in front of her house, waving, waiting for me. She's like, yeah. And so I go, and she invites me back in, and she makes me coffee with chicory, and she whips out this almond cake, and it was really great. We had another great chat, and then her friend drops by to pick her up to go to church that night for some reason. I think it was a Tuesday, and they say, do you want to come with us? And I said, well, I'm not doing anything, sure. And so I go to church with them. And we walk into this church, and there's younger people my age, and I have a great time, but it turns out that this church are evangelical Christians, French Christians. And I just had no idea evangelicals, stepped out of this country, and let alone in France, like a whole new side of French culture I've never seen. And so I'm there, it's very weird, and they're like down to, they're testifying and, singing silly songs with stupid lyrics like, let's have God over for dinner, but in French, and it's strange but wonderful because it's educational, and I think they thought they were fishing me out for saving, but I didn't mind because they were very nice people. And so this girl, Claire, takes me home, drives me home, and we exchanged numbers, and that was that. So the next day, my mood is completely transformed. I'm just the lone explorer again. I'm like ready for my lone adventure and my intrepid exploration of Avignon, this beautiful walled medieval town. So I'm at the bus stop. I get on the bus, and I'm in my lone explorer mode. And immediately there's this altercation with this Irish mother-daughter pair in the back of the bus. And the pair, can't communicate with the bus driver, and they're having some sort of fight. And so I go and help them, and it turns out they don't have cash. The bus driver doesn't accept credit, and they're having a mother-daughter drama en plus. And so I offered to pay for their ticket, and they can pay me at an ATM in Avignon. So I'm thinking I'll be the lone explorer as soon as they pay me back. Meanwhile, I'm asking the bus driver to change the music because it was horrible. Everybody on the bus is like this, and finally he's like, Michael Jackson, j'adore. The bus driver says this. So in return, I have to translate Michael Jackson all the way up to Avignon. So the whole time I'm like, I'm looking at the man in the mirror, all for an hour. And trust me, it sounds much better in English. But anyway, an hour later, we get to Avignon. Bus driver's pulling in the garage. Immediately there's this very loud, obnoxious voice from the back of the bus in French saying, can anybody speak French on this bus? Nobody answers. He's so irritating. And he starts again and he says, I'm blind, excuse me, can anybody speak French? I need somebody to walk me through the gate of Avignon. And the bus driver's staring at me at this point from the Michael Jackson lyrics. So I'm like, okay, I'll walk you through the gate of Avignon. I'm thinking, I'll be the lone explorer. As soon as I walk him in the gate, they pay me back and I'm off. So he holds on to my elbow. And of course the Irish ladies are obliged to follow him. So we walk like ducks across the street. And I'm walking through the gate, and he goes, I want you to keep talking, don't stop talking, because that's how I'll know where I want to stop. Keep talking. And so I'm like, okay, we're going through the Saint-Michel gate, and we're stepping up on the sidewalk. There's a little brasserie, and he's like, read me the menu. And I'm like, okay, there's croque monsieur, there's crudité, and the Irish daughter's like, fig and shite. And so, very surly, And so we go on for about half a mile like this. I'm like, there's a pharmacy, there's a bank, there's a hotel, and it's like 6 more menus. I read this guy. And then he goes, he finally hears where he wants to stop, and he stops, and we say goodbye. And so then we go to the ATM, they pay me back, and I'm about, and they go, you know, we really want to take you out to lunch because of you, to repay you for your kindness. And so by this time I'm like relaxed over the fact I'm not going to be the lone explorer that day. So, but it ends up, you know, we have a great time. We dance on the Pont d'Avignon, and I end up being the buffer between the mother-daughter drama pair. And we have ice cream, we have wine, and at the end of the day, we're walking back to the gates of Avignon, and I suddenly think, well, this guy Jean, how is he going to get back to the bus, I wonder? And immediately, he's standing in front of me in the middle of the square. He's like, est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui parle français? And I'm like, salut Jean, c'est moi, Gigi. And he's like, oh, Gigi. And like the Irish daughter's like, feckin' shite. And so we're reunited. We're walking across the street to the bus stop, and we all get on the bus. We conk out from the heat. It's horrible, and I completely forget where I am. I'm totally asleep. An hour later, I hear my name being called, like, Gigi, Gigi! And I'm like, what? Nobody knows. And I remember, you know, this French guy, he's telling me more tourist advice, and it's like I get the warm fuzzies, you know, from hearing my name. And so I say thank you, and we go off. The minute I get off the bus, my phone rings, and it's a French number. You know, who knows I'm here? Nobody. And it turns out this Claire from the night before that drove me, and she says, you know, do you want to have dinner tonight? And I'm like, sure. And then the Irish women want to have dinner with me tomorrow night. And I'm like, sure. And, you know, two days, you know, and I have some peeps in Provence, you know, they're calling me, you know, they're inviting me to dinner, they know my name, you know, and it goes on like this for 2 more days. It just exactly like that, the first 2 days. And it wasn't until I was actually standing at the bus stop, you know, about to go back to the train to go home to London, that I finally, you know, see the writing on the wall, you know, and literally there was some writing on the wall in the bus stop, you know, just right behind me. And they're in big, giant font, larger than myself. It was an ad for a bank that said, "Vous ne serez jamais seul," which means you will never be alone. And it just hit me on the top of the head, and I just thought, Gigi, don't ever question where you are, because whether you're there to teach or to learn or to guide or to be guided, you'll never be alone. It's a fact. And I thought, oh God, you know, universal spirit, mother, father, earth, cosmic consciousness. Thanks for a great time.